Hey guys, Space Marine 658 here, and today I am bringing you update 0.0.7 for Starlight Brigade. So today we are going to kind of cover what's been updated as well as what's going on going forward. Down below you can find chapters if you'd like to skip ahead, but otherwise let's hop right into it. So there's been some pretty big overhauls this go around. So one big change, as you may see here, is we've got our combat drone. Let's go ahead and launch that. So you can see on the right hand side, we got our combat drone pop up. So we go ahead and go into here. There have been some pretty big UI overhauls. So outside of here, we've got, smaller logos for the enemies, as well as we've got down in the bottom left, we've got our sort of fleet information, which is now based on what guns are on the enemy ships. So you have our estimated armament and then a little bit of information about the enemy. We got 4 enemy ships, a displacement of roughly 4,000 tons. Now, of course, a lot of this is subject to change just based on, as we're tweaking the game, making actual enemy ships out of real models instead of the placeholders that we currently have. We've got a raised radar signature, which eventually that'll come into play when we get into sort of the radar features. Right now, sort of just like a blank placeholder, but eventually we're going to have radar cross section that'll kind of determine if your radar can pick them up or not, depending on what they're doing and things like that. And we have relative delta V. So that is the difference between the enemy ship movement and mine. Right now it's static because they're actually not moving. They're kind of tracking me, but they're not actually moving themselves. If I slow down, they might start moving to try and catch up to me. Let's go ahead and clear out our delta V here. Yeah, so right now they're not. There is some changes I need to make in AI, and that's part of the roadmap. But as you can see here, as our difference in speed goes up, that relative delta velocity increases. So let's actually crank up this, and you see it'll climb even faster. So now when we switch back to this drone view, now what we have here is now you actually have your mouse control. Now this does mean that this doesn't follow your mouse as it did before, but if you press the left key and move, you can actually move the screen here and take a look at all your enemies. So each one of these boxes is related to an enemy. Now, right now I don't have it, but I plan to have icons or sort of like pointers that like direct which ship is which. More likely it'll be like, a number 1 here, and then next to the enemy ship, it'll have a number next to it. So depending on which ship it is in here, you'll get a clear indicator. They have names, but they'll have like an actual indicator here, so you can tell which ship is which. And so we've got here 4 ships. Right now we're targeting the fleet capital ship, so that is the flagship of this fleet. And so we've got here some information about all the different ships. For example, this has looks like quad railguns. So they have a total of 2 each. Now, this isn't completely accurate. Like I've said before, a lot of this information is going to be tweaked as we're going forward and changing the enemy ships. I'm trying to make this as dynamic as possible, but as of right now, this is all pretty static. So you can see here, its relative delta V is 100 meters per second, which would come out of here. Let's actually back up. We might have gotten too far away from the ship to actually see, because you have to be within a certain range to actually see that little indicator showing you what the fleet information is. Let's go ahead and head back that way. In fact, let's actually restart this level here. So there we go. So we have our fleet here. As you see, as they're accelerating, even though I'm not accelerating, they are. You can see the relative delta velocity as they are moving around. But yeah. And so as you can see here, we've got this information. Now this information doesn't currently update. I just wanted to throw it in here real quick. That way we can differentiate between the ships. The plan is to actually have this differentiate, and update when you're within this view. I still haven't quite decided how I want to lay these out. If I want them like this or maybe across the bottom. I want to have them in such a way that you can easily see the information of each enemy ship, but they're not quite taking up the full screen. So I may actually shrink these back just a little bit more to make them a little smaller, so it's a lot less in your face. But I haven't quite figured out how I want to do that, just because I want it to be very easy to see, but not exactly taking up the full real estate. In fact, there may even be something I do where I kind of like have this where you can pop it in and out, maybe a button over here. So it'll kind of tuck it away whenever you're not needing to see the exact ship details. So But yeah, and then on the right hand side here, we've got the current ship we are targeting, the Golden Hind. We've got the current targeted component, which is the front compartment. And if you see here, so using your keyboard keys, you've got your up, down, left, right. If you hit down, you're going to switch between which ship you're targeting. As you can see there, the icon moves with it. And so now we're targeting the Black Pearl. And it looks like, yep. So you can target each one of the 4 ships. And then we've got here is the components. So if you hit right on that arrow key, you can actually switch between the different compartments. And then what we can do is for each one of those compartments and each one of those ships separately, we can actually have a salvo set up. So let's go ahead and for the Black Pearl here, we're going to send 5 ships to the front compartment, 5 to the middle, and then 5 to the rear. And then let's see if we can target this ship with just 10 to the front compartment. And we'll do 10 to that front compartment. Now, as you can see here, we've gone over our max amount of missiles. So right now we only have 32 base missiles that we can actually launch. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to gray out this fire salvo, because you can't fire if you don't have the missiles available. And we give a little warning here saying your ship can't handle salvos that large. So what you can either do is you can either outright clear the salvo, which clears out all of your missiles, or you can just go ahead and remove a couple here. And then boom, you can go ahead and hit fire salvo. And when you do that, that'll give the orders to each of your missiles to fire off. So you can see here, they're trying to shoot at it. And of course, the rounds are bouncing off our ship as they're trying to fire through our ship. As you see, each missile goes towards its designated target. And then boom. If they hit it, they hit it. If not, they keep trying until they either explode or hit it. There we go. So you can see here, now that I split up my missiles, I was able to actually destroy 3 out of 4 of the enemy ships. Now, since there's just this last ship, I can go ahead and target them directly. So what we'll go ahead and do is just change that to here. One thing that I have noticed is that sometimes when you aren't quite zoomed in enough, you think you're hitting the enemy ship, but actually you're colliding with your own ship. And so it won't get through, and I'm going to be tweaking on that, working on that. As an example here, now we've taken aim at them, and then boom, we blew them up. So the goal is that now you've got a little bit more control over where your missiles go. So the next step is I'm going to give some additional stuff here. So let's actually step out now that we've completed showing off some of the new features here. Let's go ahead and we actually... All right, I'm looking at my screen here because I have a couple other things that have been fixed in this version as well. So we did all of those salvo implementations and designs, and then we fixed a bug causing gameplay keys not to be bindable on the Steam Deck. There's actually a checkbox that gamepads can bind to controls. That was originally unchecked for some reason. I think it just comes by default, so I checked that, so it should fix that problem. I don't have a Steam Deck right in front of me to test it, but anyone with a Steam Deck, if they want to try it, they can. I tried testing to UE5.3, but they changed a lot of the way the key rebinding system works in 5.3. So eventually I will update, but for now I'm going to stick on the current version of 5.2. And if and when I decide to rip out some major changes to the key binding system, I'll probably update at that point, because then I can redo it. There are simpler ways now that 5.3 is out, but just to make sure that it works for the current edition, I'm just going to stay on 5.2. And then as well, we fixed a bug related to enemy ship names. Originally, I had a list of ship names, and for some reason, it wasn't giving them the names. Instead, it was actually giving them just some generic names. It was like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and then a number. This was because of I changed the way the ship name system worked, but it was still pulling from the old list instead of from the new list. So that has now been fixed. So that's why you can now see that the enemy ships have distinct and separate names when you're targeting them, as well as there's a fleet name that can be given. So once we get to the point where we're generating these random fleets, and you can keep having additional enemy fleets as you defeat fleets, you'll see, random names and things like that. But yeah, so let's go ahead and close this out here. Let's actually go ahead and hit. Nope. That is a minor bug there. It looks like when you are in the salvo screen, you can't actually pause because it toggles the key binding. So we'll make sure that that's fixed. But yeah, let's go ahead and exit here. And let's go ahead and pull up our roadmap here. So for our roadmap, we have just some basic outlines of what's coming up soon. This may change and be tweaked as time goes on. Eventually, I want to have a continuously growing roadmap that I can detail out so that way people can see what's coming down the line. So for the next patch, so this patch 6 that we're releasing today, but patch 7 is going to add more components that you can target. So that'll be things like their reactor, specific engines, things like that. Then we're going to be adding new missile types. So there's the Grazer missile, which basically the missile gets close to the enemy, it explodes and shoots out a laser beam. And that laser beam will actually target the enemy ship no matter which direction the missile is actually facing. There's a little camera at the end of the missile, or at least that's what the designs look like. And it'll actually shoot out a laser beam at the enemy ship. And then you have the HE missile, which are high explosive. So with the 3 different missile types, you'll have 3 different uses. The base missile is just an all-around good missile. It has equal parts penetration and explosion. HE is great for lightly armored targets. So this is going to be used more towards ships that don't necessarily have heavy armor. Because armor is something we're going to start worrying about, which is like enemy ships will have different levels of armor. So HE won't be able to pen past a certain point, but then standard missiles can pen to a certain point, and then eventually we're going to have AP missiles, which can overpen. So if you shoot them against a light ship, you might overpenetrate with an AP missile, something that might be more useful if you had an HE missile. So that's just sort of an example of what that might look like. Then we'll add the ability to change your loadout. So you'll be able to park at the station. Originally, there was a loadout system, but with how the missiles have changed and some of the other parts have changed, I temporarily took that out a patch or 2 ago so that I can actually tweak how that system works and make it a little bit more fluid. And then as well, we have add missile and railgun ammo storage count and limit. So right now you basically have unlimited missiles. It just takes time to reload, but you don't ever run out. But I want to add the ability to run out. That way you're forced to go back to the station and both rearm and refuel. So that'll be the part of the next patch. Following that, we're looking at, we're sort of thinking about, how ships perform. So different components are going to have different effects on performance. For example, if you blow out the reactor, they're going to have a lot less power to give to both their engines and their weapons. That's not to say that missiles couldn't still be launched, but things like railguns are going to be a lot less effective, if work at all, depending on how much damage the enemy ship has sustained. Then we're going to add fuel limits to missiles. I plan to add individual railguns ability. I don't have it listed here, but this is something that I haven't decided where I want to put this in yet. But specific railguns can be stopped from working. Aside from just blowing up the reactor, you can also stop it from working by hitting it directly. So it'll be one of those components that you can actually specifically target. So if you target and hit that component, that railgun, you will actually take out that railgun. And then we have fuel limits for missiles, so that way missiles don't just keep flying forever and chasing the enemy. They will have limits. This is to make long-range combat more interesting, because missiles that are towards the end of their fuel cycle, they're going to be in a hurry to try and collide with the enemy ship. Versus if you have 2-stage missiles, they take up more room, so you can have less of them, but you can launch them at greater distances, allowing you to stay a little bit more safe and a little bit further away from the enemy. Then next we have our additional enemy type I'd like to add, which is a missile boat, so the enemy can actually shoot missiles at you. There will be the AI currently is the only one with PDC cannons, but the player will have some themselves that they will use to shoot down enemy missiles. Now, on top of that, I also plan to add more features that players can use themselves. For example, In the real world Navy, they have smoke screens. They can be used to sort of distract missiles. They don't work like old World War II smoke screens where it's just purely smoke, although tanks and things like that still have that. But they also have actual like strips of metal that fly out, thin strips that are like almost like confetti that fly out in these smoke screens that actually can sort of play havoc with missiles. So I want to have something like that on the ship. That way you can turn that on. It'll make your rough position more obvious to the enemy AI, but it means that missiles incoming are going to have a harder time locking directly onto you. As well as the next patch, we're looking at possibly adding other game modes beyond Annihilation. Right now, it's literally just destroy the enemy as quickly as possible. I want to add a couple other game modes, like Capture the Flag or something that allows the players to have a little bit of fun playing around with the ship, getting to explore other parts of it. I haven't set in stone what game mode, so if there's anything that you'd like to see, definitely let me know. But right now, my mind is sort of on the idea of either an endless wave style or some sort of, capture the flag, maybe defend the base. You got a friendly base and starts taking damage from the enemy AI, and you got to take out the enemy AI as quickly as possible. Something to that effect. And then in patch 9 also, I plan on going through, and any UI parts that haven't been updated to the newer UI standard are done so. Get updated to the newer UI standard, proper English here. So that means, things like the, in the upper right hand corner, I have that missile system that kind of shows you whether or not they're reloaded. I need to make that match the visual style of the newer stuff, but still I want to keep some of the cool stuff like the animations and things, but maybe the background changes slightly in color. And then after that, patch 10, I'm looking at possibly adding some basic sounds and voice lines to alert player to a situation on the ship. For example, a missile starts coming in towards the ship. You might have one of the people on the ship shouts out to the captain, enemy missiles, incoming. Or if you take heavy damage, somebody calling out to the captain, we've taken severe damage in the front compartment or something like that. I want to add some visual or some auditory flair with that, as well as maybe some basic, missile launching noises and things that you would hear from inside the ship. Now, I haven't decided stylistically whether or not I want there to be sound from like the outside of the ship. I think personally, I'm of the mindset that any sounds that you hear are going to be reverberations to the ship hull. So, for example, a missile launching, you're not going to hear anything because the hull isn't going to vibrate from that for the most part. But you will hear, the creaking of the doors opening and maybe like, some shuddering from missiles being reloaded. You'll hear the engines in that you'll hear the loud thrum as the gas passes through the ship and down through the nozzle, but you're not actually going to hear the actual roar of the flame because you're not actually outside the ship here, you're inside the ship, so a lot of that noise is lost out into space. But yeah, and then on that patch is when I'm going to start working on the AI once again. Right now, they're very simplistic. They basically just make one move, go out, and then they immediately go towards the player. I did that intentionally to try and make it more simple for now, so they make less mistakes. But eventually what I want to do is have them less hard-coded, more, free-floating, so that when they're spinning and moving, they're doing things a little bit more smoothly rather than like hard turns and things like that. But yeah. Otherwise, I think that is it for now. If anyone has any questions, definitely leave them in the comments down below. But otherwise, good luck and good hunting.